Well, Bronco Nation, it's official. Boise State has hired its new head coach, Andy Avalos. First off, I want to say I am tremendously excited about this hire. This is a former Boise State great. This is a former Boise State great player and defensive coach. He bleeds blue. He's blue collar to the core. He epitomizes what it means to be a Boise State Bronco. This is a player who's fifth all time on the Boise State defensive record for tackles with 355, and he's also fifth all time with the fifth longest interception return, of course, versus Louisville in that 2004 Liberty Bowl, 92 yards and a touchdown. But beyond that, this is a player who has coached at multiple different positions at Boise State, previous to spending 2 stints as a defensive coordinator, 2 years as a defensive coordinator at Oregon. This is an incredible former player, an incredible coach, and a great defensive mind, and I'm very happy to have him. I was fully on Team Kellen. I will admit it. I was on Team Kellen, yes. But after talks broke down because the Boise State administration didn't seem to be fully committed to the football program, surprise, surprise, same thing that drove Brian Harsin away. After talks broke down with Kellen Moore, of the candidates that were out there were names being thrown around. Jeff Choate, Montana State head coach, was one. Tom Herman, the former Texas head coach. Brian Johnson, the Florida offensive coordinator. Graham Harrell. Of all the coaches that were out there remaining, this Andy Avalos definitely top of the list. I'm incredibly happy. And it's not settling for Andy Avalos. Andy Avalos is not a settling position. Of all the coaches that I would have picked, and of course I don't have any say in it. I'm just a fan. But of all the coaches that I would have picked to lead Boise State, if it wasn't going to be Kellen Moore, Andy Avalos, really close second. One incredible offensive mind, one incredible defensive mind. And you know what? Right now, with the year that we have had and the couple of seasons that we've had since losing Andy Avalos to Oregon, Boise State needs a defensive mind. This year, Boise State was actually pretty good overall in the offense. I mean, they were number 1 in the Mountain West on their offensive categories. Their special teams were some of the best special teams I've seen at Boise State in the last 5 years, or maybe even beyond that. Some of the best special teams performances I've seen really since the Chris Peterson era. But the real issue with Boise State this year was their defense. Boise State's defense was 6th overall. They gave up an average of 27.1 points per game, and they gave up an average of 373.3 yards per game. Not great numbers, and it was definitely the weak point for Boise State. The offense was able to keep them in and win some games for them, but as we saw, for instance, in the Mountain West Championship game, when the offense didn't quite come up to play, they allowed San Jose State to score 30 points. Really, it was a defense. Now, I think that this defense is one that is incredibly talented. I think this is a defense that, and when I say that, I think that they have talent spread out across the board. It's not centered in one player like it has been in the past, such as a Curtis Weaver or a Leighton Vander Esch, Tanner Vallejo, Kamale Correa, DeMarcus Lawrence. It's more spread out where we have a real true team defense like we did in those 2009 and 2006 Fiesta Bowl winning teams, where the defense, there wasn't one player who was king of the defense. It was spread out over a multitude of different players, all of them performing at high levels. And I think Boise State has that potential, but what they need is someone who's going to come in with an emphasis on the defense, an incredible defensive mind. Of course, Andy Avalos is not going to be the defensive coordinator, most likely. I mean, we have seen Ryan Harsin was offensive coordinator and the head coach at one point. So we could see that. But whoever Andy Avalos either brings in for defense, as head coach, he's going to have a tremendous amount of impact on that position. I think we're going to see an incredible amount of improvement next season. Now, getting back to Andy Avalos just overall, of the candidates that were being named out there, Andy Avalos, there's another reason that he's my favorite pick. This is a player that this is a former player and a former coach who bleeds blue Boise State. And that is important because Boise State is not a stepping stool school. Boise State is, in essence, a Power 5 team playing in a G5 conference, or playing in the group of 5. They are a team that has had the highest level of success sequentially over the last 20 years, not just in the group of 5, but they're second in the last 2 decades. They're second in the FBS for most wins. They have the highest. They are second only to Ohio State, and if they lose Alabama, Boise State will be back up as number 1. This is a team that has had routine success year after year, regardless. They are a G5 dynasty. I'm not saying that they're a Nick Saban, Alabama level dynasty. I'm not saying that. But for the group of 5 level, how you look at a group of 5 school, and really Boise State, like I said, is beyond that as far as their abilities. Boise State is a dynasty in that they have success no matter who's at quarterback, no matter who's head coach out there. Every single year they've had success with only 2 seasons of less than 10 wins since Chris Peterson took over. An incredible job by the Boise State Broncos. So Boise State is not the teams of the Houston Duck Curta and even Dan Hawkins era where they were eligible, their head coaches were eligible to just be stolen away to the Power Five. That's not, Boise State is not a typical Group of Five school where they're just, head coach is going to come in for a couple of years and then leave. That shouldn't be the mindset. Boise State deserves better than that. Chris Peterson here for 8 years. He left because he got bored. Brian Harsin here for 7 years. He left because of issues with administration. Boise State is a school that deserves the best, that should attract the best, and deserves somebody who is going to deserve them, who is going to stay the course and keep Boise State at that high level success. And of the candidates available, with the exception of potentially Jeff Choate, who did coach here previously, the only player who truly bled blue, in my opinion, here was Andy Avalos, and I think he was as far as a person who truly loves Boise State and gets the Boise State way, I think he was the best candidate. I am incredibly proud of Jeff Dickey on here pulling the trigger on this hire. Of course, Andy Avalos was already a candidate before, but Jeff Dickey could have gone with any of these other candidates that were, especially some of these late ones that are kind of being added to the mix, and I think he definitely made the right decision. So I am going to try and keep this video into 16 minutes, so let's just jump in real quick, just talking about Andy Avalos. So Andy Avalos, he's had a great coaching resume. And though I was on Team Kellings, I think he's an incredible mind. I think Andy Avalos actually probably has the better resume and probably makes when you're looking at overall levels for a head coach, not necessarily offensive coordinator, but for a head coach, I think Andy Avalos makes the best decision hire here as far as his fully fleshed out resume, his experience. Now, I think Kellen Moore is a genius, that if he came into Boise State right now would have success. And I hope that at some point down the road, Kellen Moore does come back to Boise State, comes home where he belongs here in Boise, and is our head coach at some point in the future after many years of Avalos success. But as far as the candidates out there on the field, when you look at the overall resume here of Andy Avalos, it is very impressive. Previous stints at Colorado, Nebraska Kearney, Division II school, and Sacramento State. And then he came back to Boise State, where he's defensive line coach from 2012 to 2013, where he helped develop and coach up products like DeMarcus Lawrence, Michael Atkinson, Ricky Tangatoa, and Armand Nance. And then he moved to the linebacker coach from 2014 to 2015, where he coached up Tanner Vallejo, Ben Weaver, Joey Martiano, Leighton Vander Esch, Curtis Weaver, among many others. And he was also the linebacker coach through 2018, even when he took over defensive coordinator positions. He took over defensive coordinator positions in 2016 to 2018, where in his 3 years there, he averaged 22.8, or the defense, averaged 22.8 points allowed per game, which was consistently in the top 4 in the Mountain West every single season. They had a high of 23.2 points allowed, which they were still second in the Mountain West when they did that, and they allowed a low of 22.1 points per game. Just an incredible performance, helping Boise State during that time period to get to a 31-9 record overall. Now those stats I just named, especially the 22.8 average overall, that is comparing that to this year, where Boise State allowed 27.1 points per game and was 6th in the Mountain West with their worst performance in the Mountain West since joining the Mountain West. That is the most points they have ever allowed since joining the Mountain West. Boise State is in desperate need of a great defensive coach. And if you thought that Andy Avalos' performance at Boise State was impressive, now let's go into what he did at Oregon in his 2 years there, 2019 to 2020, as defensive coordinator and inside linebacker coach. He averaged 22.4 points allowed, so less than when he did at Boise State, and this is against routine Power 5 competition with the Pac-12. His first season there, let's set the stage. Before Andy Avalos joined Oregon was going through its worst 4 years defensively in what I've gone all the way back to 2000 in their program history there. They had given up 33.6 points per game in 4 years. Previously, they were ranked second in the Pac-12 coming into this 4-year rough patch. 33.6 points per game in 4 years, and in 2018, they'd averaged 25.4 points per game. So better than they had been doing in the previous 4 years, but still terrible. And when Andy Avalos came in, he got Oregon's defense down to only giving up 16.5 points per game. 16.5 points per game, which is their best performance since joining the Pac-12. Incredible performance. Only good for second in the Pac-12 that year, because I believe Stanford had an incredible year ahead of them. But 16.5 points per game is all that they allowed his first season. Incredible, and just mind-blowing job there. And that is what we need here at Boise State. Now this last year, or 2020, hey, we're not 2021, we don't have to think about it anymore. So last year, the defense did give up 28.3 points per game, which is, a drop back there, and they were 6th in the Pac-12, but there was a lot of things going on with COVID. They only played 6 games overall, all conference games. I think there was a lot of issues there that, they didn't give up what they were giving the 4 years before, and I don't think that reflects overall on Andy Avalos' performance, especially considering the year before that and his career at Boise State. I'm incredibly excited about this hire. This is just going to be a great decision for Boise State because Boise, like I said before, he's coming back to Boise State as the head coach. Boise State's offense looks great. In my last video where I talked about, or my last video about the coaching change at least, where I talked about Brian Harsin leaving, I said that right now Boise State is set up where pretty much anyone could come in and succeed. And I made the joke that even I could come in and succeed, right? That tells you how well Boise State is set up right now. Last season is not reflective of Boise State overall. There were a lot of issues going on, a lot of injuries, everything going on with COVID. But the biggest issue overall that I saw was depth. Somewhat on the offensive side, though, that quarterback position got hit so hard, and the running back position showed some lack of depth, but the defense was the worst overall. When the injuries started piling up, and they didn't have too many injuries, but when you saw the starters come out and the second string come in, there was a significant drop in the Boise State overall level of success. And that, I think, shows a lack of focus on the defense, a lack of coaching on the defense, a lack of ability to take players, because it should be blue-collar work ethic, right? Next man up. If someone goes down, next player up, Boise State should have success reaching into their first and second string, maybe even back into their third string at times. This is a school that routinely is the number one recruiter in the Mountain West. They're routinely at the top of the G5, and they're routinely beating out the Power 5 schools. This is a team that should have success reaching into their depth chart, and I don't think that's been showing right now. But I believe Andy Avalos is a coach who's going to, first off, bring stability to the program. He's a coach who's going to keep players from wanting to jump ship, and he's a coach who is going to attract, I believe, players that are looking to have success, players that are looking to have success at the collegiate level and the NFL level. He's going to be that kind of head coach that's going to, especially on the defensive end, attract players that want to come, that want to play. And I believe with his coaching mindset, when you talk about the position groups that he coached at Boise State, they were always incredibly deep. Defensive line, linebacker core, they were always incredibly deep. And now that he's at head coach now, I believe he will make an emphasis on making sure that we have depth across all positions in the defense. I think that he has his work cut out for him on the defensive end, but only as far as it goes in developing the players. Like I said, I believe that we have the talent. Even the second and third string players, I think they show the talent. They just don't show the awareness overall. And part of that is having COVID come in and knocking out their ability to train as well. But Andy Avalos, I believe, with a full year, hopefully, of routine regular practices as we hopefully begin to go to normal, at least adapt to the way things are now. Andy Avalos, he's the kind of mind that he's going to be able to develop players, especially the defensive end, that are going to go out there and have success at all levels of competition, and especially reaching back into the backfield there. I think he's going to have I think he's just going to have an incredible job here. I'm very, very excited about this head coach hire, as I've said before. And like I said, the offense right now set up to succeed. Bachmeier and Sears, two of the top quarterbacks, I believe, in the Mountain West on one team. Hopefully we can keep both of them on the team. We have George Halani, who I think is going to come back incredibly strong next year. We have an incredibly deep wide receiving core, of course, highlighted by Khalil Shakir. We have one of the best kickers I have ever, I think has the potential to be one of the best kickers to ever come to Boise State, and definitely the best freshman performance that I've ever seen, at least in my time watching Boise State football. Incredible job. We are set up for success. I believe we can keep players from leaving and bring in great talent and develop that talent, which is the Boise State way, blue-collar way, and it's the Andy Avalos way. Boise State's going to be incredibly dangerous next year. This year. I am very excited to see what they could do. I will be putting putting out a series of videos looking at the offense, defense, special teams, conference as a whole, looking at Boise State in 2020. I'm going to develop that as a series, trying to keep each one below 15, 20 minutes. That's been the number one complaint. My videos are too long. So I'm going to try and make sure that those are within 15, 20 minute range. So it's going to be a series of videos, and look for those to come out here soon, probably over the next couple of months. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoy this content. And I'll also be putting out one more NFL review of Boise State alumni in the NFL, looking at their season as a whole. So I will be developing routine content. I just hit the 15-minute mark, so I'll be wrapping up here real quick. I will be developing routine content throughout the year leading up into this year's football season. Incredibly excited to see what happens in the off season. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Make sure you join Bronco Nation Updates. Over 8,000 members. Great place to connect with other Boise State fans across the country. All right, thank you for listening to me. And as always, #cancel the College Football Playoff Committee and go Big Blue.